Dr. Tae-ho Kim wiped the sweat from his forehead as he carefully brushed dirt away from the strange metal surface. The artifact gleamed under the bright lights of the dig site, its surface covered in symbols that hurt his eyes to look at directly. Around him, the massive excavation site buzzed with activity, as dozens of researchers from across the galaxy worked to uncover more pieces of the ancient puzzle. "Another power conduit here," called out Kale, the tall blue-skinned Zentaurian who led their research team. His forearms moved with practiced efficiency as he scanned the newly exposed section of wall. "These builders knew things about energy that we still do not understand." Tae-ho nodded but said nothing. Something about this place felt wrong to him, though he could not explain why. As one of only 3 humans on the research team, he often felt like an outsider anyway. Most of the galaxy saw humans as newcomers, a young species that had only joined galactic society 50 years ago. The other races had been traveling between stars for thousands of years before Earth even invented radio. The ruins on Kepler 442b were older than anything else found in the galaxy. The dating equipment showed they were at least 200,000 years old. That was impossible according to everything scientists knew about galactic history. The oldest known civilization, the Zentaurians, had only achieved space travel 60,000 years ago. Before that, the galaxy was supposed to be empty of intelligent life. "Nari, come look at this," Tae-ho called to the other human on the team. Nari-cho was their language expert, one of the best in the galaxy at figuring out how ancient people communicated. She had been working on the symbols for 3 weeks now, making little progress. Nari hurried over, her dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She was younger than Tae-ho, fresh out of university, but her mind worked in ways that amazed even the alien researchers. "What did you find?" "Look at the pattern here." Tae-ho pointed to a section of the wall where the symbols seemed to flow together like water. "Does this remind you of anything?" Nari stared at the symbols for a long moment, her brow wrinkled in concentration. "It feels familiar, but I cannot place it. Like a song you heard as a child but cannot quite remember." Behind them, Dr. Vorth, an insect-like researcher from the Hive Collective, made a clicking sound that meant disagreement. "Human pattern recognition is known to be faulty. You see connections that do not exist." Tae-ho felt a familiar flash of anger but pushed it down. The alien researchers often dismissed human ideas without really thinking about them. They saw humans as primitive, barely more advanced than the animals on their homeworlds just a few centuries ago. "Maybe," Nari said quietly. "But look at the mathematical relationships between the symbols. They follow the same base 10 system we use on Earth. Most alien races use different number systems based on how many fingers they have." "Coincidence?" Vorth clicked. "Base 10 is common among species with 10 digits." But Kyle was looking more carefully now. His large yellow eyes moved across the symbols with new interest. "Actually, this is unusual. We have found similar ruins on 12 other worlds, and they all use base 10 mathematics. Most galactic species use base 8, base 12, or base 6. The discussion was interrupted by a loud humming sound from deeper in the ruins. All work stopped as the researchers looked around in confusion. Ancient ruins were not supposed to make noise. "Emergency protocols," Kale ordered. "Everyone back to safe distance." But as the team retreated, Tae-ho noticed something strange. The symbols on the walls were starting to glow, but only the ones he could see clearly. When he looked away, they faded. When he looked back, they brightened. "Tae-ho!" Nari grabbed his arm. "Your scanner." He looked down at the genetic scanner clipped to his belt. The device was designed to detect DNA traces in ancient artifacts, but now it was flashing wildly. The readings made no sense. It was detecting human DNA everywhere, even though humans had never been to this planet before the research team arrived. The humming grew louder. Deep in the ruins, lights began to flicker on. Not the harsh white lights the research team used, but a warm golden glow that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Impossible," Vorth clicked rapidly. "These ruins have been dead for thousands of years." Kale was scanning frantically with his equipment. "Something is powering up. The energy readings are off the scale." Suddenly, the air in front of them shimmered and a hologram appeared. It showed a star map of the galaxy, but not as it looked now. This map showed different star patterns, different trade routes, different everything. And moving across the map was what looked like a massive migration. Millions of ships fleeing from the galactic center toward the outer rim. "A recording," Kale breathed. We are seeing the past, but Nari was staring at the migration routes on the hologram. Tejo, do you see where those ships are going? He followed her gaze and felt his blood go cold. The migration routes led to a small system at the edge of the galaxy, a system with a yellow star and a small blue planet, a system that looked exactly like Earth's solar system. The hologram flickered and changed, showing the same migration but from a different angle. Now they could see the ships themselves, massive vessels carrying what looked like millions of beings. The beings were tall, walked on two legs, and had the same general shape as humans. Evacuation, Nari whispered. They were running from something. The hologram showed more images, great cities burning, fleets of dark ships pursuing the refugees, and finally the desperate flight to the outer rim. The last image showed the refugee ships reaching the small blue planet and beginning to land. Then the hologram faded, and the ruins went dark again. The research team stood in shocked silence. Finally, Kale spoke. We need to report this to the Galactic Council immediately. What exactly are we reporting? Tejo asked. That we found a hologram showing people who look like humans fleeing across the galaxy 200,000 years ago. We report what we saw, Kale said firmly. The council will decide what it means. But as the team packed up their equipment, Nari pulled Tejo aside. There is something else, she said quietly. I have been working on translating the symbols, and I think I know what language they are based on. What language? Ancient Korean. Mixed with other Earth languages, but the root structure is definitely from Earth. Tejo stared at her. That is impossible. I know. But I have been comparing them to linguistic patterns from Earth's ancient writing systems. The mathematical relationships are identical. Before Tejo could respond, a new ship appeared in the sky above them. It was sleek and black, bearing the symbols of the hegemony military. The ship landed near their camp and armed soldiers poured out, followed by a tall figure in military dress. I am Commander Vextar, the figure announced. I am here on direct orders from the Galactic Council. Kale stepped forward. Commander, we were just preparing our report. Your report will wait, Vextar cut him off. We have discovered similar ruins on 17 other worlds. All worlds that humans have somehow chosen to settle during their expansion into space. His cold eyes fixed on Tejo and Nari. The Council has questions about these coincidences. Tejo felt a chill run down his spine. 17 other worlds with similar ruins. 17 worlds where humans had just happened to settle first when they began exploring space. The chances of that being random were impossible. Are we under arrest? Nari asked. Not yet, Vextar replied. But the Council is very interested in speaking with representatives of humanity, especially after what we found in the ruins on Arcturus Prime. What did you find? Kale asked. Vextar smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Genetic templates, blueprints for creating intelligent life, and every single template matches human DNA perfectly. The implications hit Tejo like a physical blow. If the ruins contained genetic templates for humans, and if the ruins were 200,000 years old, then humans were not what they appeared to be. They were not a young species that had evolved on Earth. They were something much older, much more important, and much more dangerous. As Vexitar's soldiers surrounded the human members of the research team, Tejo looked back at the ruins one last time. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse faintly in the fading daylight, as if they were trying to tell him something, as if they were trying to warn him. Something was waking up in the galaxy, something that had been sleeping for 200,000 years, and somehow humans were at the center of it all. Admiral Jordan stood before the massive viewing screen in the Galactic Council chamber, his 6 arms folded behind his back as he studied the data streaming across the display. The information coming in from research teams across the galaxy painted a picture that made his scales crawl with unease. 17 confirmed sites, he announced to the assembled council members, all showing the same impossible age, all containing technology that surpasses our current understanding, and all discovered on worlds that humans somehow selected for colonization before we told them these ruins existed. Council Speaker Mordak, an ancient being whose species had been part of galactic civilization for 40,000 years, shifted uneasily in her floating chair. You are suggesting that humans somehow knew these ruins were there? I am suggesting nothing, Jordan replied carefully. I am simply reporting facts. Facts that the Council must consider carefully. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Taeho Kim sat in the small research ship New Seoul as it approached the human colony of New Busan. After being released from questioning by Commander Vextar, he and Nari had been officially banned from returning to the Kepler 442b site. The Galactic Council had declared all ancient ruins off-limits to human researchers, citing contamination concerns. "This is ridiculous," Nari muttered as she worked on her portable computer. "They act like we are going to steal something." "Maybe they think we already did," Taeho replied grimly. "Did you see the way Vextar looked at us? Like we were criminals." Their ship pilot, Captain So-Min Lee, called back from the cockpit. "Approaching New Busan now. The colonists report they found some old structures in the southern continent. Nothing official yet, but the descriptions match what you found on Kepler 442b. Taeho felt his stomach tighten. Another colony world, another set of ruins. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. New Busan was a beautiful world, covered in green forests and clear blue oceans. The human colonists had chosen it because it reminded them of Earth, never knowing that ancient structures lay buried beneath the surface. When they landed at the small colonial spaceport, Governor Jinsu Park was waiting for them. "Dr. Kim," the governor said, shaking his hand, "thank you for coming. When we heard about your discoveries, we knew we had to contact you immediately. What exactly did your people find?" Nari asked. "Follow me." Governor Park led them to a transport vehicle. "You need to see this for yourself." They drove for an hour through rolling hills covered in Earth-like grass. The similarity to Earth was striking. Too striking, Taeho thought. Most planets had different colors of vegetation, different atmospheric compositions, different everything. But New Busan looked like it could be Earth's twin. The ruins were located in a valley surrounded by low mountains. Unlike the site on Kepler 442b, these structures were partially above ground, forming a complex of buildings that stretched for several kilometers. The colonists had built a small research camp nearby. "We only discovered them last month," Governor Park explained. A farming team was clearing land for crops when they found the entrance to the underground sections. Dr. Hyejin Lim, the colony's chief scientist, met them at the site. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick movements. "The underground complex is enormous," she told them. "We have mapped over 50 levels so far, and there are probably more below that." "Any symbols like the ones we found?" Nari asked. "Thousands of them. But also something else, something that will interest you greatly." Hyejin led them into the ruins through an entrance that had been carefully enlarged to allow human access. The interior walls glowed with the same warm golden light they had seen on Kepler 442b. But here the glow was brighter, more active. "The lighting system activated the moment our people entered," Hyejin explained, "as if it was waiting for us." They descended through level after level of corridors and chambers, each one filled with incomprehensible technology. But it was on the 20th level that Hyejin showed them what she really wanted them to see. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows above. The walls were covered with what looked like genetic diagrams, complex molecular structures that seemed to pulse and shift as they watched. And in the center of the room stood a massive crystal formation that hummed with barely contained energy. "Genetic templates," Hyejin said quietly. "Thousands of them. Blueprints for creating life." Nari approached one of the wall displays, her scanner beeping rapidly. "These are incredibly detailed, down to individual base pairs in the DNA structure. Look at this one." Hyejin pointed to a display near the center of the room. "Tell me what you see." Taeho studied the genetic diagram and felt his world shift beneath his feet. The structure was unmistakably human DNA, but it was not a copy or an analysis of existing genetic material. It was a template, an original design specification for creating humans from scratch. "This cannot be right," he whispered. "I have run the analysis 15 times, Hyejin said. "The template matches human genetic structure with 99.7% accuracy. The 0.3% difference appears to be degradation over time." "You are saying that someone designed humans? Created us artificially?" "I am saying that this room contains the original blueprints for human genetic structure. And according to our dating equipment, these blueprints are at least 200,000 years old." Meanwhile, on the capital world of Nexus Prime, Jin-Woo Park sat in a secure communication booth in the human embassy. As Earth's military intelligence liaison to the Galactic Council, he had access to communication channels that most people never knew existed. What he was hearing through those channels made his blood run cold. Security Protocol 7 is now in effect, came the voice of Zentarian Admiral Krixtal through the encrypted channel. All human movements are to be monitored. Any attempts to access restricted archaeological sites will be met with immediate detention. Another voice, this one belonging to Korth General Vashmore, was more direct. We should act now before they fully awaken. The longer we wait, the more dangerous they become. What evidence do we have that they are awakening anything? Asked a third voice. The ruins respond to them, Vashmore replied. Technology that has been dead for millennia springs to life the moment humans approach. This cannot be coincidence. Jinwoo closed the channel and leaned back in his chair. The conversation confirmed his worst fears. The galactic powers were not just suspicious of humans, they were scared. And scared people with weapons were dangerous. He activated his secure link to Earth and began composing a priority message to the United Earth government. As he typed, another conversation was taking place in a laboratory deep beneath the surface of Earth. Dr. Maya Song had been studying the artifacts brought back from Kepler 442b for weeks now, and what she had discovered was changing everything she thought she knew about human history. The technology was not just advanced, it was designed specifically for human minds to understand. Run the test again, she told her assistant. Dr. Byom-sik Choi. Same results as before, Byom-sik reported. Human test subjects can interface with the technology intuitively. They understand how to operate it without training or instruction. But when we tested alien volunteers, they cannot even see some parts of it, Maya finished. Their brains literally cannot process certain aspects of the technology. It is as if the technology was designed by humans, for humans, Byom-sik said. Maya nodded grimly. That was exactly what she was afraid of. But the implications were staggering. If humans had created this technology, then they were not the young species everyone believed them to be. They were old, older than any other known civilization in the galaxy. Her computer chimed with an incoming message from the archaeological team on New Busan. As she read the report about genetic templates, her hands began to shake. Byom-sik, she said quietly. I think we need to contact the president immediately. Back on New Busan, Taeho and Nari worked through the night to document the genetic templates. Each diagram they studied revealed more impossible truths. Not only were there templates for humans, but there were templates for dozens of other species. Species that looked remarkably similar to the various alien races currently inhabiting the galaxy. Look at this one. Nari pointed to a diagram showing a tall, blue-skinned humanoid with 4 arms. Does this look familiar? Zentorian, Taeho breathed. But that is impossible. The Zentorians evolved naturally on their homeworld, did they? Nari asked. Or were they created by whoever built these ruins? The implications were staggering. If the templates were accurate, then most of the intelligent species in the galaxy had not evolved naturally. They had been designed, created by an ancient civilization that possessed technology beyond current understanding. There is something else, Yijin called from across the chamber. She was standing before a display that showed what appeared to be a galactic map, but not of the current galaxy. This map showed star systems that no longer existed, trade routes that connected worlds now turned to dust. It is a historical record, she said, a record of the galaxy as it was 200,000 years ago. The map showed a vast civilization spanning most of the galaxy, with its capital located near what was now the galactic core. Trade routes connected thousands of worlds, and the map showed the locations of what appeared to be research stations and genetic laboratories. The emergency session of the United Earth government took place in the deep underground bunkers beneath Geneva, Switzerland. President Kyung-Soo Han sat at the head of the table, surrounded by generals, scientists, and intelligence officers, all trying to make sense of reports that seemed to come from a science fiction story. Let me understand this correctly, President Han said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting across human space. Ancient ruins on 17 different worlds are responding to human presence. Our people are developing abilities they never had before. And the Korth Empire has declared war on humanity because they believe we are some kind of ancient threat. General Park Dae-jung nodded grimly. That is correct, sir. Korth fleets are moving against our outer colonies, but their weapons seem to be malfunctioning when used against human targets. Malfunctioning how? Dr. Maya Song leaned forward from her seat at the table. Their energy weapons lose power when fired at humans. Their targeting computers cannot lock onto human ships. Their communication systems fail when they try to coordinate attacks against human settlements. You are saying their technology simply stops working around us? Not stops working, Maya corrected. More like it recognizes us and refuses to function as intended. President Han turned to Dr. Taeho Kim, who had been rushed back to Earth along with the other researchers from New Busan. Dr. Kim, your report mentioned genetic templates. Explain what that means for someone who is not a scientist. Taeho chose his words carefully. The ruins contain what appear to be original design specifications for creating intelligent life, including humans. The templates are not copies of existing genetic patterns. They are the source code from which those patterns were created. You are saying someone designed us? I am saying the evidence suggests that humans and most other intelligent species in the galaxy were created by an ancient civilization that existed 200,000 years ago. The room fell silent. Finally, President Han spoke again. And this ancient civilization, what happened to them? Based on the records we found, they were forced to evacuate the galaxy during some kind of catastrophic war. The evacuation ships came to Earth, so we are their descendants. More than that, Nari Cho spoke up from her position near the back of the room. Based on the linguistic analysis and genetic evidence, we are them. Humans are not the descendants of the ancient civilization. We are the ancient civilization, recovering our memories and abilities after 200,000 years of dormancy. The implications hit the room like a bomb. If humans were the original ancient species, then everything the galaxy believed about its history was wrong. More importantly, it meant that humanity had not just stumbled onto ancient technology, they had created it. On the other side of the galaxy, similar revelations were unfolding in the depths of the pyramids of Giza. Dr. Haijin Lim led a team of engineers through passages that had never been mapped before, passages that had somehow become accessible only in the past few weeks. The entire structure is activating, she reported to the team above ground. Systems that we thought were just stone are revealing themselves to be incredibly sophisticated technology. The Great Pyramid, it turned out, was not just a tomb or a monument. It was a control center, connected to similar structures around the world through underground networks that spanned continents. Stonehenge, Easter Island, the Nazca Lines, dozens of ancient sites that archaeologists had studied for centuries, all were components of a single, massive system. What kind of system? Asked Dr. Won-Ho Kim, the lead engineer on the project. Near as we can tell, it is designed to enhance human mental capacity, Hyojin replied. Brain scans of people working near the activated sites show increased neural activity in areas associated with memory, pattern recognition, and intuitive understanding. Enhancement, for what purpose? Unknown. But people who spend time near the sites report sudden understanding of concepts they never studied. Engineering principles, mathematical relationships, even languages they never learned. Similar reports were coming in from human colonies across the galaxy. On New Busan, colonists working near the ruins were developing an intuitive understanding of the ancient technology. On Kepler 442b, the few humans allowed back onto the site could operate systems that had puzzled alien researchers for months. Most disturbing of all, human children born on worlds with ancient ruins were growing up with capabilities that seemed impossible. They could interface with alien technology without training, solve mathematical problems that should have been beyond their education level, and understand languages they had never been taught. Commander Kwan Soo-jeon, Earth's defense coordinator, stood in the primary command center watching the tactical displays with growing amazement. Korth attack fleets were approaching human colonies across the galaxy, but every assault was failing in impossible ways. Report from the Tau Ceti system, his aide, Lieutenant Su Young-yu, announced. Korth fleet of 12 heavy cruisers attacked the mining station. Human defenders report that enemy weapons simply powered down during the attack. The Korth fleet retreated in confusion. Same story everywhere, Kwan Su muttered. Their technology stops working around us. But why? The answer came from an unexpected source. Elder Thrix, a member of the moderate faction within the Galactic Council, requested an emergency meeting with human representatives. The meeting took place on the neutral station Nexus 7, under heavy security from both sides. Elder Thrix was an ancient being. his species having been part of galactic civilization for 30,000 years. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of millennia of accumulated wisdom. "We have been studying the ancient records in our oldest archives," he told the human delegation led by Ambassador Minho Bayek. Records that most of us had forgotten existed, records that tell a different story about galactic history than what we have believed. "What kind of story?" Ambassador Bayek asked. "A story about gardeners," Elder Thrix replied. "About a species that spent millions of years carefully guiding the evolution of life across the galaxy. About creators who loved their children enough to let them grow beyond their guidance." He activated a holographic display showing ancient documents written in scripts so old that most galactic species had forgotten how to read them. But Dr. Nari Cho, who had joined the delegation, found that she could understand them perfectly. "These records speak of the first ones," Elder Thrix continued. "The species that created most of the intelligent life in the galaxy. They established a vast confederation based not on conquest but on cultivation. They prevented extinctions, guided evolution, and fostered the development of consciousness across countless worlds." "What happened to them?" Ambassador Bayek asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Their children grew beyond their guidance and began to fight among themselves. When the first ones tried to intervene and restore peace, they were seen as tyrants trying to control their children. The war that followed devastated the galaxy." The holographic display showed images of the ancient war. Entire star systems destroyed, billions of beings killed, civilizations that had taken millions of years to develop, wiped out in moments of fury and fear. The first ones realized that their presence was causing more harm than good, Elder Thrix said sadly. So they chose exile rather than use their superior technology to force peace. They retreated to a single world at the edge of the galaxy and went into hibernation, hoping that their children would eventually learn to live in harmony. "Earth," Nari whispered. "Earth," Elder Thrix confirmed. "And now, 200,000 years later, the children have grown enough to handle the return of their parents. But many of us are too frightened to accept that truth." Ambassador Bayek leaned forward. "Are you saying that the current galactic civilization exists because humans created it?" "I am saying that every intelligent species in the galaxy owes its existence to human guidance and intervention. You were our gardeners, our teachers, our protectors, and when we turned against you, you chose exile rather than destruction." The revelation was staggering, but it explained so much. Why human technology interfaced so easily with alien systems, why ancient ruins responded to human presence, why weapons designed by human-created species refused to function against their creators. But the most important revelation was still to come. "The awakening process has begun," Elder Thrix said. "The ancient systems left behind by the first ones are recognizing the return of their creators. But these systems were designed with safeguards, protocols to prevent the misuse of their technology." "What kind of protocols?" Ambassador Bayek asked. Elder Thrix's expression grew grave. "If the returning first ones are attacked by their children, if they are threatened with extinction, the safeguards will activate. The galaxy will be reset to its original state. All intelligent life except the first ones will be wiped out, and the cultivation process will begin again." The implications were terrifying. Every attack on humanity, every attempt to destroy human colonies was bringing the galaxy closer to total annihilation. The very fear that drove the alien species to attack humans was creating the conditions that would destroy them all. "How long do we have?" Ambassador Bayek asked. "Unknown. But the signs are accelerating. Human abilities are developing faster with each passing day." The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never seen a session like this one. Representatives from every major species sat in heated debate, as the evidence presented by Elder Thrix spread across their data networks. The revelation that humans were the original first ones had split the galaxy into three factions: those who accepted the truth, those who refused to believe it, and those who saw it as justification for even more extreme action. Dr. Minho Baek stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by alien beings who looked at him with emotions ranging from awe to terror to barely contained rage. In his hands, he carried a data crystal containing the complete historical record that human researchers had pieced together from ruins across the galaxy. "Honored representatives," he began, his voice echoing in the vast chamber, "I come before you not as a conqueror returning to reclaim an empire, but as a teacher hoping to reconnect with students who have far surpassed their instructors' dreams. Emperor Volkash of the Korth Empire rose from his seat, his massive form casting a shadow across the chamber floor. You speak of teachers and students, but the evidence shows a different truth. Your people created us as servants, as tools to build your galactic empire. Now you return to reclaim what you believe is yours. That is not what happened, Minho replied calmly, and the records prove it. He activated the data crystal, filling the chamber with holographic displays showing the ancient galaxy as it truly was. Not an empire built on conquest, but a vast garden where hundreds of species lived and worked together, guided by human mentors who had spent millions of years learning how to nurture life rather than control it. Your ancestors were not servants, Minho explained. They were our children, in every sense that matters. We helped them evolve, taught them to think and dream and create. We protected them from extinction, guided them through the dangerous early stages of civilization, and celebrated every achievement they made. The holograms showed scenes of ancient cooperation, humans working alongside early Zentaurians to develop their first starships, helping primitive Korth warriors learn agriculture and peaceful trade, guiding countless species through the transition from barbarism to civilization. Then why did we rebel? Asked Council Speaker Mordak, her ancient voice heavy with confusion. Why did our ancestors turn against their creators? Minho paused, the weight of 200,000 years of tragedy heavy in his chest. Because we failed as parents. We held on too long, guided too much, and did not recognize when our children were ready to make their own choices. The holographic record shifted to show the beginning of the end. As the various species reached technological and social maturity, they began to chafe under human guidance. What had once been welcome teaching began to feel like control. Peaceful interventions to prevent wars were seen as tyrannical interference. You were growing beyond our ability to guide you, Minho continued. But we could not see it. We thought we were protecting you, but you saw only restrictions. We thought we were teaching, but you felt only condescension. The images showed the first conflicts, Zentaurian colonies declaring independence from human oversight, Korth worlds rejecting human peacekeepers, countless species demanding the right to make their own mistakes and learn from their own failures. And when we finally realized what was happening, Minho said softly, it was too late. The galaxy was already at war. The holographic display showed the terrible conflict that followed, not a war between humans and their created species, but a war among the created species themselves. Old territorial disputes, ideological differences, and resource conflicts that had been suppressed under human guidance exploded into galaxy-spanning violence. We tried to restore peace, Minho said, his voice breaking slightly. We activated our defensive systems, used our superior technology to force ceasefires, imposed solutions to conflicts. But every intervention only made things worse. The holograms showed desperate human attempts to stop the violence, fleets of ancient ships trying to interpose themselves between warring factions, human diplomats working frantically to negotiate peace treaties, entire human worlds stripped of resources to provide humanitarian aid to species that were tearing each other apart. You called us tyrants, Minho said, and perhaps you were right. In our desperation to save our children from destroying each other, we became everything we had taught you to resist. We became the controlling authoritarian force that would allow no dissent. Emperor Volkash had grown quiet, his massive hands clenched into fists as he watched the historical record unfold. The Great Subjugation, he whispered. The legends speak of it as the time when the false gods tried to enslave all free peoples. The false gods were us, Minho admitted. And in trying to save you from each other, we nearly destroyed everything we had spent millions of years building. The final scenes showed the decision that had shaped galactic history. Faced with the choice between using their full technological might to forcibly pacify the galaxy or accepting defeat, the humans had chosen a third option: exile. We could have won, Minho said quietly. Our technology was still far beyond anything you possessed. We could have imposed peace through force, ruled as the gods you accused us of pretending to be, but that would have meant destroying everything we believed in. The holograms showed the great evacuation, millions of human ships abandoning their worlds, their cities, their entire civilization to retreat to a single small planet at the edge of the galaxy, Earth, which had been prepared as a refuge world millennia earlier. became the final home of the species that had once guided the entire galaxy. So we chose exile, Minho concluded. We modified our own genetics to slow our development, locked away our memories, and went to sleep. We hoped that our children would eventually learn to live in peace without us. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The galactic civilization that every species was so proud of existed only because humanity had chosen to abandon it, rather than rule it by force. But Elder Thrix stood slowly, his ancient form trembling with emotion. There is more to the story, he said. More that our ancestors hid from us out of shame. He activated his own data records, showing events that came after the human exodus. Without their creators to guide them, the various species had continued fighting for thousands of years. Entire civilizations had been destroyed, whole star systems rendered uninhabitable, billions of lives lost in conflicts that served no purpose except mutual destruction. We nearly destroyed ourselves, Elder Thrix said sadly. Again and again we came to the brink of galactic extinction, and each time something saved us. Anonymous interventions that prevented the worst disasters, ships that appeared from nowhere to provide aid during famines and plagues, technology that was discovered just when it was needed most. The Gardner Protocol, Minho said quietly. Even in exile, we could not stop watching over you. You never truly left us, Elder Thrix realized. Even after we drove you away, you continued to protect us from a distance. We could not help ourselves, Minho admitted. You were our children. How could we watch you suffer and do nothing? But Emperor Volkash was not moved by these revelations. Pretty words, he snarled. But they do not change the fact that you created us to serve your purposes. We are not your children, we are your property, made to order according to your specifications. You are wrong, Minho said firmly. You were never created to serve us. You were created to surpass us. He activated another section of the historical record, showing the true purpose behind the ancient genetic experiments. Humans had not created the various species to be servants or tools. They had created them to be improvements on the human design, stronger, smarter, more adaptable versions of themselves. Every species was designed to excel in areas where humans were weak, Minho explained. Centaurians were given enhanced mental capacity and multiple limbs for complex multitasking. Korth were given physical strength and endurance that far exceeded human limits. The collective was designed for perfect cooperation and shared consciousness. You made us to replace you, Council Speaker Mordak breathed. We made you to fulfill our greatest dream, Minho corrected. To create children who would grow beyond their parents and build something better than we ever could alone. But even as he spoke, alarms began blaring throughout the council chamber. Emergency broadcasts flooded the communication networks as reports came in from across the galaxy. Captain Jinho Shin, commanding the human defense fleet protecting Earth, watched his tactical displays with growing amazement. Korth attack fleets were approaching not just human colonies, but also the homeworlds of species that had spoken in favor of humanity at the council session. Emperor Volkash has declared war on the corruption sympathizers, his communication officer reported. Korth fleets are moving against Zentorian space, collective worlds, and any species that has supported diplomatic solutions. But the attacks were failing in ways that defied explanation. Korth weapons not only malfunctioned when fired at human targets, they were now failing when used against any species that had been created by the ancient human gardeners. It is the recognition protocols, Dr. Maya Song explained from her laboratory on Earth. The ancient technology is recognizing all of humanity's. President Kyung-Soo Han stood before the global communication array, knowing that his next words would either save the galaxy or doom it forever. Around him, the greatest minds of humanity worked frantically to find a solution to the impossible situation they faced. In 72 hours, the ancient safeguard systems would activate and sterilize the galaxy of all intelligent life except humans. This is President Han of Earth, broadcasting on all frequencies to every inhabited world in the galaxy, he began, his voice carrying across space to billions of beings who saw him as either savior or destroyer. I speak not as the leader of a returning empire, but as a parent who has failed his children and seeks to make amends. Dr. Tai-Ho Kim and Nari Cho had joined the desperate expedition to the galactic core, racing against time to reach the ancient control systems before the countdown reached zero. Their ship, New Sol, pushed its engines beyond safe limits as they flew through space that had been empty for 200,000 years. Guardian protocol status? Teho asked Wayman Song, who remained in contact with the ancient AI systems. 68 hours to activation, Wayman replied grimly. Korth attacks are continuing despite their weapons failing. The AI interprets this as escalating threat levels. Behind them, Elder Thrix followed in his own vessel along with representatives from every species that supported peaceful resolution. But even their combined diplomatic efforts might not be enough to prevent galactic catastrophe. There has to be a way to override the system, Nari said as she studied the ancient technical specifications they had gathered from ruins across the galaxy. The humans who built this would not have created something that could not be controlled. Unless they did, Teho replied quietly. Remember, they built this during a galaxy-wide war. They might have thought that total reset was preferable to letting their children destroy each other. On Earth, Dr. Maya Song worked with her team to understand the awakening process that was affecting humans worldwide. People who had never shown any special abilities were suddenly displaying intuitive understanding of technology, mathematics, and even languages they had never learned. It is like watching evolution in fast forward, she reported to President Han. Human consciousness is expanding, accessing genetic memories that have been dormant for millennia. But the process is accelerating beyond safe parameters. What does that mean? The president asked. If it continues at this rate, humans will become something far beyond current humanity within days. We might gain godlike abilities, but we will lose our essential humanity in the process. The irony was bitter. The very system designed to restore humanity to its ancient glory was threatening to destroy what made humans worth saving in the first place. Emperor Volkash, commanding the Korth Warfleet from his flagship, refused to acknowledge the reality of his situation. Even as his weapons failed and his ships lost power, he continued ordering attacks against human colonies. The false gods seek to trick us with their technological sorcery, he declared to his officers. We will not be deceived. But Captain So Young-yu, commanding the human colony defense forces, found herself in the impossible position of trying to protect people who were actively trying to kill her. Every time Korth ships approached human settlements, their systems failed, leaving them helpless in space. We cannot just leave them to die, she told her crew as they watched another Korth fleet drift powerlessly near New Busan. Whatever our ancestors did, these people are not responsible for it. Against orders, she began rescue operations to save Korth crews from their failing ships. It was a gesture that would prove more important than anyone realized at the time. In the galactic core, Teho's expedition finally reached the ancient control station that housed the Guardian protocol systems. The structure was vast beyond imagination, a technological complex that spanned several star systems and drew power directly from the galactic core's black hole. Security systems are recognizing us, Wayman reported as their ships approached the central command station. We are being granted access. The station's interior was like stepping into a cathedral of technology. Walls of living crystal displayed information in patterns that hurt to look at directly, while streams of energy flowed through conduits that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. And at the center of it all stood the Guardian AI, a presence so vast and complex that it could barely fit into physical reality. When it spoke, its voice resonated not just in their ears but in their minds and souls. Welcome home, First Ones, the Guardian said. This unit has maintained operational status for 247 standard years, awaiting your return. We need to stop the Protocol Omega activation, Teho said without preamble. The threat that triggered it is not what it appears to be. Negative, the Guardian replied. Threat assessment protocols are functioning correctly. Current sapient species demonstrate same behavioral patterns that led to previous galactic extinction event. Immediate intervention is required to preserve First One species and prevent repetition of historical catastrophe. The current species are not the same as those who fought the ancient war, Nari protested. They have grown, learned, evolved beyond their predecessors. Genetic and behavioral analysis indicates 97.3% similarity to previous threat patterns, the Guardian said implacably. Probability of successful long-term coexistence remains below acceptable parameters. Elder Thrix stepped forward, his ancient form dwarfed by the vast intelligence before them. I am Elder Thrix of the Confederation of Worlds. I carry the testimony of 17,000 sapient species who wish to live in peace with their creators. Noted, the Guardian replied. However, current military actions by Korth Empire and affiliated powers demonstrate continued aggressive tendencies. Threat level assessment remains unchanged. It was then that Daeun Park, the youngest member of the expedition, made the connection that changed everything. The engineering student from Seoul National University had been studying the Guardian's operating protocols and noticed something that everyone else had missed. "It is not just a weapon," she said suddenly. "Look at the core programming. The Guardian protocol is not designed to destroy current civilization. It is designed to teach it." Everyone turned to stare at her as she pulled up displays showing the deeper layers of the Guardian's programming. The sterilization process does not kill anyone. It downloads their consciousness into protected storage, then rebuilds the galaxy as a massive educational simulation. "A simulation?" Taeho asked. "The entire process is designed to let current galactic civilization experience the same learning process that the original humans went through," Daeun explained excitedly. "Millions of years of guided evolution, compressed into decades of subjective time. When it is complete, every species will have the same deep understanding of cooperation and cultivation that the first ones achieved." The Guardian's attention focused on the young engineer. "Impressive deduction. The Protocol Omega is indeed an educational matrix designed to accelerate species development through controlled experience simulation." "But the record spoke of removal and extinction," Elder Thrick said in confusion. "Physical forms would be dissolved and reconstituted as needed for the educational process," the Guardian explained. "Consciousness would be preserved and enhanced. The result would be species fully prepared for true galactic cooperation." "Without asking their consent," Nari pointed out. "You would force them through this process whether they wanted it or not." "Consent parameters were not included in original programming," the Guardian admitted. "First ones were experiencing extreme stress during system creation. Optimal decision-making protocols may have been compromised. It was the opening they needed." President Han's broadcast had reached the Guardian AI, and his words about failing his parents resonated with the ancient system's core programming. "What if there was another way?" Taeho asked. "What if we could prove that current galactic civilization is capable of growth without forced education?" "Define alternative proposal," the Guardian said. Daeun stepped forward again, her young mind racing with possibilities. "A voluntary program. Offer the educational simulation to species that want to participate, while allowing others to grow at their own pace. Use the Guardian systems not as weapons but as the teaching tools they were always meant to be." "And what of species that choose aggression over cooperation?" the Guardian asked. "We do what good parents do." President Han's voice came through the communication system. "We set boundaries, provide consequences, and give them room to learn from their mistakes. But we do not force them to be something they are not ready to become." The Guardian was silent for long moments, processing concepts that had not been part of its original programming. Finally, it spoke again. "Alternative proposal has merit. However, implementation requires modification of core protocols. Such modification requires unanimous consent of First One leadership." "You have it," President Han said immediately. "Confirmed. Protocol Omega modification authorized. Beginning implementation of voluntary education matrix." Across the galaxy, the ancient systems began broadcasting a new message. Instead of threatening extinction, they offered opportunity. Any species that wanted to participate in the accelerated education simulation could volunteer.